大家好，我是瑞内。作为一名普通的教育工作者，我在北京的一所公立学校工作了10余年。作为一个对自己的孩子教育质量有追求的家长，我来到了加拿大，希望寻求更优质的教育环境。那面对加拿大相对陌生的教育环境，很多问题摆在了我们面前。比如，如何为我的孩子选择一所合适的学校？在公校与私校之间，我如何抉择？如果我希望我的孩子能够上一所世界知名的大学，我需要做哪些准备？等等这些问题，我都希望能找到答案。那今天非常荣幸能够采访到 Canada Royal Arts Academy 的校长 Mr. Darling 先生。Okay, so nice to meet you, Mr. Darling.
你好。
你好。So, Mr. Darling, can you give us a self-introduction
Sure.
to your fans?
Okay, well, I've been in education for a long time. I took my degree at Oxford University in the UK and then came to Canada, and I taught for 21 years at St George's School in Vancouver, and another 4 years I was principal at St John's School. And during that time I've had 2 children, and both of those children went to private school here. My son went to St George's School and my daughter went to Crofton House School, and they are both now in their 30s. One went to a Canadian university and one went to a US university. So I've got a lot of experience both from UK universities, US universities, Canadian universities, as well as Canadian private schools and an English private school too.
Okay, so can you talk about something more about the experience when you work in St. John's and St. George?
Well, they're both quite different schools. One was all boys and the other is a mixed boys and girls. So it was quite an interesting experience teaching at both of those schools. And one is an AP school and the other is an IB school. So I've had quite a variety of educational experience. One is a much bigger school and the other is quite small. So there are all kinds of different schools, and I think that's one of the things that we need to bear in mind, that no one school fits all kids. Some kids will be much happier with a large school, and others like the small environment where they feel more noticed and they're probably a bit more shy.
Okay, definitely I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
So among public schools and private schools, as a parent, how to choose? Because why? Can you tell us why a lot of parents are holding the idea? They thought private schools are better
right,
than the public schools.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is a common question. Why should people pay for a private school education when they can get a free education in public schools? The main reason is I think you've got far better facilities in private schools. Private schools are generally much better funded than the public schools. You have wonderful teachers in the private system as well as the public system, but you tend to have more of the better teachers in the private system than the public system, for one very simple reason, and that is not all teachers are equal, and some teachers are less equal than others, and in the public system those teachers you have to keep. In the private system, teachers who aren't quite so good don't get kept, so you have a much higher standard, I think, in general in the private system. The other thing is that in the public system you don't have to do extracurricular activities. that depends on funding to a great deal. So, for instance, at a private school, all teachers must teach their subject area, but they also coach extracurricular activities. So in my case, I was brought on board at St George's to teach senior history and also start a rowing program. So every teacher had their own non-academic specialty. In the public system, you don't have to do anything outside of teaching your subject. And the students don't have to do anything either. In the private system, all students have to do extracurricular activities. They must do sports. And so that's a big difference as well. And I think the last one is class size. Class sizes are much bigger in the public system. They can be up to 30, and in the private system they usually average around 15 to 20. So you get much more personal attention. It's much more difficult to fall through the cracks at a private school than a public school that has maybe 2,000 students. St George's is a big private school, but that only has 11 or 1,200 students. So it's a much more personalized learning environment.
Okay, so how to choose the right school for my child if he wants to go to a high school in Vancouver?
Well, I should have added one other difference between the two, that is if you're a foreign student, you are going to be paying the same amount for a public school education, let's say in the Vancouver School Board, as you would in a private school. So if I were a parent and I was paying the same amount of money in fees, I think I would prefer the smaller environment of a private school than I would in a large public school. But to get back to your specific question, how to choose the right school, there is no right school for all kids. It's not a one-cap-fits-all kind of situation. If I have a very quiet, shy, artistic child, there are some schools that I would not send them to. There are some schools that I would send them to. So for instance, if you had a very shy, withdrawn child, I would send them to a big school that had a very robust sports program, because they probably would not be involved in sports. I would probably send them to a much smaller school where they would feel more comfortable. If I had let's say a boy who was physically big, strong, took a very keen interest in sports, yes, there's certain schools that he would definitely be more comfortable with. And in a small school environment, he might feel very uncomfortable because there wouldn't be the same opportunities. So I think you've got to look at a number of things. You have to look at the type of school. Is it co-ed or is it single sex? I think you need to look at whether it's a very sporty school or whether it's very artistic. You need to look at whether it's a large school or a small school, and whether it's in the centre of town, or whether it might be a boarding school on Vancouver Island, say, so somewhere removed. So there's a lot of different factors to look at. So not just what the school is like, but what your child is like, because the right school for your child is going to be where your child feels most comfortable.
Yeah.
And he's not going to have a very comfortable time if he feels out of place. So it has to be somewhere that he feels comfortable for the next five years of his life.
Totally agree. There's no common right school for every child,
No.
but there is a right school.
There is a right school
which is right for some specific person.
So the best way to look at this is, is seriously look at what your child is interested in, what your child's personality is like, and visit schools and see what your son or daughter feels like, because there's a certain feel to an environment when you go into a school. You get a sense of what it's like. You look at the students, you look at their faces. Are they smiling? Are they excited? Are they engaged? Or are they just tramping around from one class to another? And you want to see how they engage with your son or daughter, and it's what makes them feel comfortable. Do they feel welcomed by that particular school?
So Mr. Darling, as the end words, do you have some other things which you want to tell the parents?
Sure. I think if you're interested, we've got a series of about 10 short videos that we're going to put up, and it will cover a number of different topics, such as how to find the right school for your child, how to decide whether you want to go to an American, a British, or a Canadian university, particularly since a lot of Chinese students now are applying to British universities, and the number going to American universities is slowing down, and also some general things such as how you can build self-esteem and why self-esteem is especially important in determining academic success. So we're not born with natural brilliance. This comes as a result of being nurtured, being developed by parents, and most of that is self-esteem. A student who feels good about themselves usually performs very well, and students with a very low self-esteem, they're the ones that don't do academically well and often drop out. So it's good for parents to know what they are doing. Does it help or hinder self-esteem? And a lot of parents are confused about it. They think that praising a child is going to elevate self-esteem. It doesn't. And what we want to do is you want to raise confident kids. You don't want to raise coddled kids. But we've got about 10 topics that we're presenting.
Yeah, thank you very much. Your words impressed me a lot and gave me a lot of help. 那么今天的我们的谈话就到这儿，谢谢大家，希望大家能够继续持续关注我们。再见。
谢谢。
谢谢。